Welcome to the Wire Podcast. We're here in isolation during the COVID-19 pandemic, which looks like it's finally maybe going to taper down, but who knows, fingers crossed. And we're going to talk today with CJ Nelson about his Parallax, his Outlier, and most importantly, his Neoclassic. Oh, dude, we're surfing on Monday.
I'm going to surf like I'm 10 years old.
I guess, is it California or is it just San Diego County or?
It's just San Diego, the border up to Oceanside up here. But it's I guess it's up to each city. I mean, the ban's lifted for accessing the ocean by like the state officials or whatever, but it's up to the cities to be staffing the beaches, and if they're ready with lifeguards and police or whatever, then they're going to open it up. I know Del Mar's not opening and Solana Beach isn't opening, but I think like La Jolla and up here and Carlsbad and just everywhere else will probably be open.
When is the last time you surfed? Did you trek north at all to any of the places we were allowed to recently?
I haven't. I mean, I surfed as much as I possibly could up until the day they shut it down.
Uh-huh.
You know, I didn't like go to lowers or something or anything like that, but I just surfed at the end of my street and just stayed in the water. So from that day to this day, it really hasn't been that long. I think it's been like 3 weeks maybe.
Okay, 3 weeks. So I can't help but share with everyone, one of my favorite things I've ever heard you say.
Let's do it.
So I don't remember where we were. I don't remember what we were doing. But I remember the look on your face and the assurity and the intensity with which you said, quote, "I surf more than Felipe Toledo."
You know what? That's not my opinion. My friend Ashton Goggins from Stab, he said that to me a while ago. It's been about a couple of years since he said that, but I do surf a lot, you know, like in the summer and stuff. It's eight-ish hours a day.
8-ish hours a day.
Yep.
And I mean, you absolutely do surf more than most pro surfers I'm aware of, or any surfers I'm aware of.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can ask the kids down at Sano and stuff. They know, you know, they trip on me. They're like, dude, how, you know? But, you know, in my brain, I wasted a lot of time in my life. And, you know, the expiration date, you know, on our bodies, it's like, I'm not going to hit that expiration date and be like, damn, I should have surfed more. No.
Is that really what it is? You just want it more? You think you want that experience of surfing more than other people?
Well, I think that, you know, we all love surfing, but I think that, you know, for me, my dad always told me too, like, don't worry about the bullshit. Let your surfing do the talking. Like, just surf, you know? Mm-hmm. And when he passed away and I got sober and like those words, you know, stuck in my head, it's like, I'm not going to like waste 1 second on some like bullshit internet battling or ego wars or whatever. Like, I'll be in the water. And if you want to come talk to me or surf with me, then I'll be out there. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just a different approach. It's like, I want to maximize my water time. Like, I don't care about anything else, really, you know?
Yeah.
And that makes the boards better. That makes, you know, I can dive deeper into more designs because I can ride 2 and 3 boards a day. Like, I don't have to go, ooh, I'm rusty. Like, let me like get my head together.
Yeah.
I'm not rusty.
It seems like the kind of boards that you ride and the kind of waves that you're into, they open up so many more options for your surfing life than the person who's looking for 6-foot tubes and riding shortboards.
100%. You know, I grew up in San Francisco, you know, and I grew up skating. And so when I felt like surfing, I didn't get my driver's license until I was 27, you know, and yeah, when I wanted to surf, it was like, I wasn't like checking a cam or like, it was like, I'm going to go down to Rockaway and surf, you know, and if it was crappy, I surfed. If it was good, I surfed. But I guess my point is, you know, I never wanted to, I mean, of course I'd love to surf like perfect restaurants every day. Who wouldn't? But I don't want that to be like the carrot that's dangling in front of me. You know, I want the crap at the end of my street to be the carrot.
Mm-hmm.
And I want the perfect utensils for that. You know what I mean? And growing up with Bob Pearson and, you know, a bunch of influences that lived through the 60s, you know, that were surfing, and like Donald Takayama, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
greatest surfers of the 60s. But knowing Donald Takayama in the early 90s and 2000s and stuff, just when I'd come to town, I'd always go and say hi and stuff. I really paid attention to like what he was shaping for the waves in front of his store and what he chose to ride.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, what he chose not to ride because he had ridden it in the 60s, you know. And I just think that, yeah, I think that there's functional boards for not so great waves. And if you want to surf 8 hours a day or 3 sessions a day here in California, what is your quiver going to look like?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about winning heats on that quiver. I'm talking about maximum enjoyment, because surfing is personal.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to fucking qualify. We're just trying to like go to bed at night tired and fulfilled.
Mm-hmm. What do you see, like, and we'll get to some details on boards in a second, but why do so many people miss that in your view? Because I mean, you know, the amount of fun that you and your crew have kind of up in your zone around Sano.
Yeah.
What is everyone else missing that makes them not see the reality of their surfing existence as clearly as you might? I mean, what makes a guy like me who weighs 205 pounds try to dial in a shortboard quiver when he lives up the road from a closeout beach break? Why do people not? I mean, do you ever consider this? Or
I do. I think about it all the time. It would be like going out and buying a car and looking to like NASCAR drivers to pick out your next car.
Uh-huh.
Like, you don't live at a NASCAR track, you know? And here in California, I mean, how many A+ days do we have? You know, and are we focusing our energy on surfing those A+ days? Like, we all want to surf like Taylor Knox or somebody of that caliber in those type of waves?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we realistic enough to say, this is what it's like 90% of the time, and I need a utilitarian thing to go out and have them catch waves the easiest, have the most amount of fun, and go home?
Mm-hmm.
I find it hard to understand as well, because I'll paddle out 90% of the time. I'm sitting around a bunch of guys on shortboards that are too small for them, and when they do catch waves, you know, they don't really know how to ride them, you know what I mean? But they catch waves and make waves, but they're not really like
Mm-hmm.
riding those boards even halfway to those boards' potential, and they're frustrated, you know. And surfing's supposed to be fun, you know.
Well, watching your particular brand of having fun while surfing has been fun for me to watch and get involved in a little bit. One of the cool things about you having gotten involved with Firewire is that Firewire hasn't really gotten involved with you. Like, the way you design boards, the way you build boards, the way that you create your brand, the way that you surf, the team riders you work with, all that's the same as it ever was. And
Right.
For us, it's just kind of fun to help bring that to a little bit bigger of an audience and help try to get your boards into more surf shops than they were previously in. And most recently, we came out and, you know, shared with our audience some of the visuals and the footage and the photos of you surfing the Outlier.
Yeah.
And I kind of think it would be fun for a second to maybe talk about the Outlier and the Parallax and how they either relate or don't relate to the Neo Classic. Just for fun for a second, I mean, how do you describe the Outlier and the Parallax? And are they kind of similar types of boards or not?
They are. They're boards that are meant, you know, like hydrodynamically to go from point A to point B the quickest. You know, very, very low tail rocker, low nose rocker, rolled entry, like they go lickety split, you know. They're boards that are meant to feel amazing. Mm-hmm. You would never ride one in a contest because it's not a board where you're gonna tick boxes and get scores on those boards, but you are gonna feel amazing. Mm-hmm. So when I first built the Parallax, which was before the Outlier, I had an injury and I couldn't surf good, and I knew it. You know, it was gonna be a long time. I tore my hamstring. And I was like, I wanna find what board feels the best to ride. Like, just feel, like if you're blind. Mm-hmm. And so I started diving into that. Displacement holes came up a lot. And the guys from Malibu, Greg Little and that type of dude who pioneered these things off feel. It was never about performance. Even their theory is like, you're not going to impress anybody who's watching from the beach riding these things.
Really, huh? That's such an interesting lesson to learn, that those dudes developed that just off of how it felt. They weren't watching videos of themselves.
No. And Nat Young was the first guy to bring one to Malibu, and it was a Keo. He brought it to Malibu in '68. And Greg Little and all those kids at Malibu who were riding longboards saw Nat ride that. And by all accounts, Nat Young did the most mind-blowing surfing anybody at Malibu had ever seen on this board. It changed the course of Malibu folklore and history, and you know, this displacement hole culture evolved into what it is today. But so anyway, that's where it came from, and I started looking at those boards. I actually had a few, and they feel amazing. So I built a couple long ones to replace my nose rider, which is like by nature a board you have to really move a lot on to trim it, get to the nose, get to the tail. For a displacement hull, longboard, the Parallax, which you can stand in the middle, do nothing, and just feel like a superhero.
Yeah.
You know? And that's what changed pretty much everything moving forward, because it made me question, why am I surfing in the first place? Mm-hmm. And if I was alone permanently, would I be riding a nose rider and trying to like accumulate tip time? Or am I doing that because it's like what you're supposed to do in longboard culture? And when people are on the beach, am I considering their opinions of me? Mm-hmm. It made me question myself.
Huh.
And I realized, yeah, a lot of my board choice is based on who I'm with and who's watching me, which is retarded, mm-hmm. in my opinion. Looking back. So it just changed everything. I was like, why don't I ride boards that feel good?
So I have to share with you, one of the reasons that isolation has been not as difficult on me personally as it could have been is the day before all the beaches closed, I went out and I surfed a mushy, junky little point break on a 9.3 Parallax. It was so fun.
You know, that board being so flat in the tail, I mean, in theory, it's an S deck, you know, up in the tail, step deck in the nose. In theory, it's the I mean, you can stand on the tail and there's no catching anywhere, and you can just bank off the sections and maximize. It's like super efficient, you know. It trims, it goes off the tail very well, and in a very quick wave like Malibu, you can nose ride it a little bit and stuff, but it's designed for enjoyment, you know. It's designed to feel rad, mm-hmm. and it does, you know. In my book, I'm very addicted to that, like maximum release. You know?
So you have the Parallax, and you have the Outlier, and their whole bottoms. How do those end up influencing the design of the Neoclassic? Yeah, so like if you're like a hull purist guy, those aren't real like Greg Little style hulls. Mm-hmm. So those are a lot harder to ride, but when you get them to sing, they really feel good. I just kind of normalized it a little bit, made it a little bit thicker, a little not as pinched, not as rolled on the bottom. It's more like
it's more like a hybrid between a hull and, you know, just a mega functional modern longboard.
Mega functional modern longboard with a rolled bottom. That's a good soundbite. I'm gonna remember that one.
That's what it really is in theory. But yeah, so after riding these boards that just go, it's really hard to get back on a traditional longboard, you know, which is a 50-50 railed, 18 to 25 pound longboard, single fin longboard. You know, it's, you get on a board like that after riding these boards that feel like they have a motor, and you feel like you're dragging a sandbag, you know?
Huh. And is that kind of by design? Are those boards supposed to feel like you're dragging a sandbag so that you can stay in a certain position on the wave?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the more tail rocker you put in a board, and these boards have a lot, the more tail rocker you put in a board, the more the nose lifts for nose riding, so you can have extended tip time.
Uh-huh.
You know, like a David Nueva nose rider or a Model T or my Sprout. Those boards are designed to get speed from the center, slow down when you get to the nose, and basically you can't really arc a turn on them because there's no edge. So they're more like pivot slashes that you can do on them because they don't really turn circularly, right?
Yeah.
So going from a Parallax to a board like the Sprout, you realize how much surfing evolved from 1965 to 1968. You know, it's like they invented like skateboarding going from clay wheels to urethane wheels. Dramatic, you know, discovering edge and discovering all these things. So yeah, so edge is great. You know what I mean? Edge for the average guy or a beginner, nearly a necessity. You know, it would be ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, if you're just starting out to go out and buy a longboard that doesn't have edge in the tail, you're just going from a 1-year learning curve to a 5-year learning curve.
Huh. So what did you specifically do with the neoclassic? Because you've said before, and I've heard other people say this as well, the neoclassic is kind of a shape that you can learn to longboard traditionally on with a shorter learning curve. And I wonder why specifically. I mean, when you started out with the neoclassic, was it specifically just an attempt to like add modern rails to a classic outline?
I mean, kind of. You know, when we built the Guerrero, you know, that was a board that didn't have edge in the tail, and that was a involvement style traditional longboard. And I knew that I wanted to ride edge in the board, even though the board I won the duct tape on had no edge. When we made it into a model, I added edge because, you know, it's just more functional. You know, it just opens up the back half of your surfboard a lot. You know what I mean? And it was important to me to be able to. I don't want to like hit a ceiling and go, well, this is as good as I can do this. Yeah. And then not have more, you know? Yeah. So adding that to these boards, adding edge, I think just opens up the board and gives it a much longer lifespan. And it goes from like a singular knife blade to a Swiss Army knife. Huh. You know what I mean? It's like
way more multi-purpose.
Now you can just, you can ride it everywhere. So anyway, the original classic we had didn't have edge in the tail. And I saw a lot of my intermediate beginners type customer that buy my board gravitating towards that board. Huh. And a lot of them liked it because it was really flat in the tail, which a really flat in the tail board can kind of pretend to feel like edge, but it's not. So I looked at that customer and I was like, oh, you know, I want to build a no-brainer. I want to build a board that like every single dude who walks into a surf shop that wants to dive into longboarding can buy that board and be happy. You know, there's never going to be somebody who's like, oh, I can't control it. You can.
Is it kind of accurate to say that the Sprout is kind of for like the expert logger, and the Guerrero is for the advanced logger, and the Neoclassic is kind of for the intermediate logger?
Yeah, I mean, you could say that. Granted, I'm doing probably the best longboarding of my life on the Neoclassic.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, the most enjoyable.
Okay.
For sure. So, I mean, I'd say like if you lived at Malibu and you were going to just surf Rincon, Malibu, and C Street, and that was your deal, you could probably, and you didn't like big waves, a Sprout would be a functional board to have because you could, it's a point, those are point and shoot kind of waves a little bit. They're point breaks, and, you can surf the nose a lot.
Yeah.
But like if you're surfing Oceanside Harbor and Cardiff, and these type of waves in this area at least, I just think that riding a board like that all the time, you're just going to be faced with a lot of sections on a lot of waves where you're like, I got nothing for this.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Because our waves are slopey and they need a lot of cutting back. And if you want your cutbacks to feel good and engaged,
Yeah.
I just think that a modernized rail helps a lot. I mean, if you could walk into Donald Takayama's store in 2003,
Mm-hmm.
the majority of the boards in those stores were boards that were very functional.
Mm-hmm.
In the pinks and DT2s, like his type of board, he grew up in the 60s having to ride boards without edge in the tail. And, he didn't really enjoy riding them anymore because he knew too much.
Mm.
And you look at guys like Nat Young, he's not riding boards without edge in the tail. Like Magic Sam, his all, the most famous board he rode was 50-50 rails, but when longboarding evolved and surfboard design evolved, he didn't go backwards ever because he had to do that for so long. The edge in the tail or a 2+1 setup or whatever these guys are riding now, it's liberating to them. They're not trying to make any, it has to be like it was in the 60s type statements because they were there.
So you're interesting because you're very aware of what was going on in the 60s and the 70s and really in all generations of surfing, but you're also very forward minded and you experiment a lot with Thunderbolt technology, which is the way that your boards are built. And I'm curious why you chose Thunderbolt Silver for the Sprout, the Guerrero, and the Neoclassic. I mean, what is Thunderbolt Silver and why is that build method important to you?
So that's the technology that Yuson and I kind of came up with for my boards specifically. Because I never intended on making, high performance boards to do aerials on. I wanted a board that would feel traditional, but would have like a little bit, a little bit more than a normal blank would have, a little bit more flex. For people that don't know about the technology Yuson has come up with, the concept is the tail twists. So when you go into a cutback, the tail loads up and kind of squirts you out of your turns. So I wanted that, who wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
But I didn't want to lose the weights I like. I didn't want to lose, the traditional feel that I grew up riding and that I'm so accustomed to,
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you kind of kept traditional weight while somehow adding more bend and flex and response.
Absolutely. I mean, I had to, because for me, longboarding, my longboarding rhythm, the way I surf a longboard requires a weight. It requires thicknesses and lengths, and I'm not going to lose the DNA that I've fallen in love with in my surfing. And that was important to me because you know, you look at boards like other boards in the industry, other technologies or whatever. And I mean, it's like, you get on a board like that and you're like, whoa, this thing paddles weird, you know?
Uh-huh.
And I just wanted to make sure that I didn't have to like go through anything like that. You know, I wouldn't, if it wasn't way better, I would just be riding poly Volan boards, you know, but this is a better material to put in the water, and it feels better any way you slice it.
Well, you mentioned kind of the rhythm or the flow that you specifically surf with. And I wonder, in your own words, before I ask you a couple more questions to wrap up about the neoclassic, in your own words, like, what is it that you're uniquely talented at, or what is it about the way that your mind works that's enabled you to surf in a way that's garnered so much appreciation from traditional longboarders, classic longboarders, performance longboarders? Really, anyone who rides boards longer than short boards kind of seems to hail you. And I wonder, in your mind, like, you know, what is it about your surfing that you're good at? What is the skill that you have that others haven't had kind of in your community? And I know that's a weird question, and you're a humble guy, and you don't ever try to bring attention to yourself in this way. But I do feel like there's a certain group of people who are interested in your answer to that question. I mean, what is it that you're good at? What is the pitch that you're tuned into that other people kind of in your zone or in your culture haven't tuned into? What is it that you get? What's the kinesthetic intelligence that you have? I mean, have you ever thought about this? Has anyone ever asked you a question like this?
Kind of. But it's a tricky answer. You know, I think
I have an answer. I can tell you what I think it is before you tell me what you think it is.
Okay.
When I especially look at your early footage and even your footage today, it looks unthinking. It doesn't look deliberate to me. It doesn't look effortful. It looks like your mind, especially kind of in some stuff that came out in the early 2000s, like it looks like your head is somewhere else. And your body
drunk back then.
So even when you were drunk, maybe, and your head was somewhere else, like your body just kinesthetically has this weird intelligence, and it sort of can operate on its own without you consciously trying to surf.
Yeah, I mean, that's nice to hear. But like, truth be known, I think that time and energy will get you everywhere. And I was fortunate enough to be blessed with time. And I chose to put the energy into it. You know, if you surf 8 hours a day and your parents support you and you have it, you know, more or less handed to you, but if, you know, you're going to be good at it, you know? I think that growing up skating in SF, I think is a big factor, because, well, there's two things involved with that. Mm-hmm. Being on a board all the time, skating out of my bedroom, out the front door of my house, and being on that board all day, every day. You know, I'm more comfortable moving on a board than I am walking, you know? So, and then skating switch and learning all this stuff that, you know, all of that. When people started skating switch, I was skating switch in SF, and I was like, oh, and, you know, in the back of my head, you know, I was kind of thinking, I'm going to be a pro skateboarder. That's kind of where I was at. But my dad was smart enough to be like, there's no longevity in that for you. You better, you know, don't lose track of surfing. You know, you're gifted. But I started, when I'd go longboarding, I'd be like, I'm going to surf switch, because I was skating switch. And so I applied a lot of the switch stuff I learned skating to nose riding. So
that's cool, because so much of the time skating influence gets credited with influencing airs and shortboarding and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just applied switch, the switch balance I was learning skating into longboard surfing.
Yeah.
And I think that at the time, nobody was really doing it. And so I think doing something that nobody was doing was important to me, and not just being a follower and just being like, oh, whatever he says goes.
Mm-hmm.
I was always not into that. And then also being a skater and growing up going to punk shows and all of that, I had kind of a fuck you mentality.
Mm-hmm.
If you were going to corral me down a path, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And do something different.
Yeah.
And so I haven't really lost that, you know. When everybody's going to focus on hanging 10, I'll focus on turning and like finding other parts of longboarding that I love. When everybody was focused on turning, I'm trying to learn how to nose ride switch. I'm just trying to, like, when the body expires and I'm done with all of this, if I haven't uncovered every stone in my surfing life, I'm going to be pissed off. You know what I mean? I'm going to be like, damn it. And so just because everybody's doing something doesn't mean that it's right.
Yeah, I appreciate your answer so much, because there's certain elements of longboarding that you're extremely talented at that you don't do in your day-to-day surfing. And it's been so interesting to me to watch that, like, it almost seems like there's an arrogance in your surfing or the way that you approach it, because everyone knows that you're world-class at a few things that you don't even do anymore. And to hear you say that, like, when something's in vogue or popular, or when people want something from you, you're going to go do the exact opposite thing.
Well, I'm just going to, yeah. I mean, I'm going to, like, if you can hang 10 for 30 seconds on a wave at Malibu, are you going to spend your whole life doing it? Are you going to dive into other stuff and be a master at your craft? You know what I mean? And you're right. Like, there was a time in my life where I was like so focused on nose riding, I wasn't even surfing.
Really?
I wasn't like doing the appropriate positioning and turning for the sections coming at me. I'm just thinking, like, how am I going to hang 10 longer?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't even imagine. I wasted so many good waves.
Really?
Not surfing them completely.
Yeah.
And so it was discipline. I mean, I told myself, dude, you don't know how to turn a longboard good, you know? And this wasn't that long ago. This was, you know, about 6 years ago.
Really?
I was like, I don't really surf a longboard the way I want to. I surf a longboard the way I've kind of corralled myself into doing it. So I made myself not go to the nose for like a couple years.
That's so like, cool. I think that's
focused.
So cool.
Discipline, that's another thing. Being disciplined. You
disciplined yourself to stay off the nose.
And people were like, dude, you can't even surf a longboard anymore. Like, why aren't you nose riding? And I have, you know, steer the course, you know?
Well,
so time, energy, discipline, not being a follower, you know, thinking for yourself, looking at what's, like, really being honest with yourself. Like, does this surfboard feel good? If it doesn't feel good, trash it.
Okay, so a lot of people think that a neoclassic is going to feel good for them. And a lot of people have a lot of questions about what size neoclassic should I get. I'm zeroing in on neoclassic right now because it just seems to be a board that a lot of people have an intrigue in, along with the Parallax and the Outlier. But neoclassic is in a 9.5 and a 10.0. Why is a neoclassic in a 9.5 and a 10.0? Why did you choose those two lengths? And how do people decide between the two? Is it a skill level thing, a type of surfing thing, a size human thing? 9.5, 10.0, what's the difference and why? How do people decide between them?
I think size human is a good place to start. If you're a bigger guy or somebody who's used to big boards, which a lot of longboarders are, I think a 10.0 is good. You just catch a lot of waves and yeah, I mean, I grew up riding big boards, so I choose to normally ride the bigger ones. Yeah, just because I grew up on my dad's boards, and you know, I think a lot of older guys like big boards, you know. And also, like, if you live at Malibu, if you live at a linear wave, Noosa, Malibu, waves of that caliber, longer boards for longer peeling waves are better, in my opinion. But if you surf in the wind, you live in Oceanside, you surf the pier, you surf, wherever down at shores or something, like, or in Florida, you're like a Florida guy or whatever. The East Coast guy surfs a lot of windy beach break. I would ride a smaller board. And so, I tell people this a lot. I usually start my morning, like if I'm going to go to Sano for the day and surf all day, I'll start my morning in the morning glass on the biggest board I have, like a 10-footer or glider. And as the wind comes up, my second session, I'll probably ride my 9.5. And then in the evening, when it's not glassed off yet and it's really blown, I'll paddle out on like an 8-footer. Wow. Because I feel like shortening your rail line in chop just frees up your approach.
I want to zero in on the fact that like you've dialed your life to the point where you can plan your boards throughout the day on any given day. I mean,
absolutely.
That's incredible. You're dialed into a certain type of surfing and a certain type of board in a certain part of the planet where you can surf 8 hours a day with longboard in the morning, shorter board midday, and an even shorter board at the end of the day. And you can do it in your van at the beach, without leaving the beach for 10 hours, 12 hours? I mean,
yeah, a long time.
I mean, that's something I got to hand it to you, dude. Like you know what you like in life, you figured out how to get it, and you're doing it kind of daily. That's something that a lot of people
I'm trying my best, and I'm trying to share it. I'm trying to offer these boards and my theory and whatever. It's definitely based off of maximum enjoyment. Not necessarily maximum performance, but maximum enjoyment and maximum efficiency, for riding waves. What board is the most efficient in each condition for your enjoyment level,
Well, let's finish on this note. For your maximum enjoyment, riding a neoclassic, a parallax, and an outlier. What size neoclassic do you ride and what fin and why? What size parallax do you ride and what fin and why? And then what size outlier do you ride and what fin and why?
It's funny because I ride them all a lot, but we'll go with a 10-foot neoclassic. I ride a lot. And I ride a 10.5 Power Flex fin that I designed with a fin company called Flying Diamonds.
Very good fins.
That would be my staple kind of log. That's the board that's in my car right now with that fin. Okay. For the Parallax, I like the 9.6 a lot. I ride it in those midday sessions a lot. That's a great board for me. And I ride a 10.5 Parallax fin by the same fin company, Flying Diamonds, in that board. And I ride it at the front of the box, and that's why I ride a longer fin, because in those type of conditions, you move your fin forward, it just loosens everything up, and it's really slidey and fun. So anyway, and then I ride the 7.6 Outlier a lot, and I ride a 9-inch Evolution fin or 9-inch involvement fin by Flying Diamonds in California.
Okay, so everything we just talked about, we'll put links to in the info to this video. Geez, man, super cool having conversations like this with you, man. Let's do it again sometime and talk about more boards. And
heck yeah.
What I want to do someday publicly is pick your brain about Mickey Dora, and I hope you're cool with that.
I'm cool with that for sure. And you know what? Like if anybody out there that watches this wants to DM me, feel free. I got time. If you need any advice on picking a board or picking a fin or whatnot.
It's good catching up, CJ. Let's do this again.
Thanks, brother.